Daniel sat alone at the corner table of the orbital station's viewing lounge, watching the last of the evening's paired couples filter out through the pressure doors. The automated dating algorithm had failed him again. 3 hours, 4 attempted matches, and not a single conversation that lasted more than 15 minutes. He traced his finger along the rim of his recycled water glass, the condensation leaving trails on the synthwood table. The war had changed him. Everyone said so, though they rarely said it to his face. The Centauri conflict had ended 5 years ago, but Daniel still carried the weight of those 17 months in deep space combat. The algorithm was supposed to account for that. Trauma-informed matching, they called it. But how could lines of code understand what it meant to watch your entire squadron vaporize in a plasma barrage? "Table 47, a voice asked. Daniel looked up, ready to tell whatever station attendant this was that yes, he was leaving, no need to rush him. But the words died in his throat. She wasn't human. The woman, person, standing before him had the general bipedal structure of humanity, but that's where the similarities ended. Her skin possessed an opalescent quality, shifting between pearl and pale lavender depending on the angle of the station's artificial lighting. Where humans had hair, she had what appeared to be delicate, bioluminescent filaments that cascaded down to her shoulders, pulsing softly with an internal rhythm. Her eyes were larger than human standard, with vertical pupils that contracted as she focused on him. "I'm Orla," she said, her voice carrying a slight harmonic undertone, as if two frequencies were speaking in perfect synchronization. "I apologize for the delay. The decontamination protocols for Lyran physiology take longer than the system anticipated." Daniel's military training kicked in before his social awkwardness could. He stood, nodding that she was slightly taller than him, perhaps 6 feet even. Daniel Cross, I didn't realize the matching algorithm included interspecies pairings." "It doesn't typically." Orla settled into the seat across from him with a grace that suggested a slightly different relationship with gravity than humans possessed. "I'm part of a pilot program. The Interspecies Cultural Exchange Bureau believes that shared trauma creates bridges that biology cannot. You were in the Centauri conflict. I survived the Void incursion on Lyra Prime." The name hit Daniel like a physical blow. Lyra Prime. The human forces had arrived 3 days after the incursion ended. He'd seen the footage, the classified reports. An entire civilization's homeworld, ravaged by the same enemy humanity had been fighting. Except the Lyrans had faced them alone, without allies, for 6 months before the interdimensional rift had finally collapsed. "I'm sorry," Daniel said and meant it. "The casualty reports from Lyra Prime were, I can't imagine." Orla's bioluminescent filaments dimmed slightly, a sign of emotion, Daniel guessed. 3 billion out of 4.2, my entire family, my bonded partner, my research team. She paused, and when she spoke again, her dual-toned voice carried a weight that transcended species. "The algorithm matched us with a 93% compatibility rating, the highest on record for the program." Daniel sat back down slowly. The lounge was nearly empty now, just a few scattered individuals nursing drinks and staring out at the stars beyond the reinforced viewports. 93%. Based on what? Our collective misery. Based on neurological adaptations to extreme stress, similar cognitive processing patterns in crisis situations, compatible communication styles, and Orla tilted her head in a gesture that was distinctly non-human but somehow readable, a mutual tendency to self-isolate while simultaneously seeking connection. Despite himself, Daniel laughed, a short, bitter sound. "They can quantify that now." "The algorithm can quantify everything. Whether it can understand anything is another question entirely." Orla's filaments brightened slightly, shifting toward a warmer golden hue. "You thought your evening was over. You were preparing to leave." "I was," Daniel admitted. 4 failed matches. I think I'm broken in ways the algorithm can't fix." Or perhaps the algorithm sent you matches designed to confirm your existing self-assessment, preparing you psychologically for what it calculated you actually needed. Orla leaned forward slightly. Tell me, Daniel Cross, in the Centauri conflict, what was your role? Tactical Communications Officer, 7th Deep Space Fleet. I coordinated strike patterns, managed information flow between squadrons during combat operations. He found himself talking more easily than he had all evening. I was good at it, keeping track of multiple data streams simultaneously, predicting enemy movements based on incomplete information, maintaining coherent strategies while everything was exploding around us. Pattern recognition and synthesis under extreme duress, Orla said. I was a xenolinguistic cryptographer. When the incursion began, I was part of the emergency response team attempting to decode the enemy's communication protocols. We needed to understand them to fight them. I spent 6 months listening to the linguistic patterns of the entities that were destroying my world, trying to find meaning in what might have been meaningless. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. Did you find meaning? No, but I learned to function in the absence of meaning. I learned that survival itself can be its own form of defiance. Orla's eyes, those unusual, beautiful eyes, held his gaze. The humans who came after, they were kind, efficient, professional, but they looked at us survivors with pity, as if we were broken things to be catalogued and resettled. I know that look, Daniel said quietly. I see it every time I attend a veterans gathering, every time some well-meaning civilian thanks me for my service. Yes, Orla breathed, and the single word carried volumes. Exactly that. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of mutual understanding settling between them like a physical presence. Through the viewport, Daniel could see a transport ship beginning its departure sequence, ion drives flickering to life in the darkness. The algorithm suggested we spend the next phase of the evening in the zero-gravity observation dome, Orla said. Neutral territory. No tables, no formal seating arrangements, just space and conversation. Daniel considered this. Every instinct developed over 3 hours of failed connections told him to politely decline, to retreat to his quarters, to accept that connection was something that happened to other people. But looking at Orla, this alien woman who had survived her own personal apocalypse, who carried her trauma with a dignity that neither asked for pity nor pretended the wounds didn't exist, he felt something he hadn't experienced since before the war. Curiosity, not just about her species or her experience, but about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the algorithm had actually understood something fundamental that he'd been refusing to see. I've never been to the zero-G dome, he admitted. Neither have I. The gravitational differential makes my people uncomfortable. Orla's filaments rippled with what might have been amusement. But the algorithm insists it would be optimal for us. Something about removing physical boundaries and existing in a state of controlled vulnerability together. That's either profoundly insightful or completely insane. Perhaps both. Orla stood, extending her hand, 5 fingers like humans but longer and more delicate. Shall we find out? Daniel looked at her hand for a moment, then at her face, seeing not an alien but a person. Someone who had survived the unsurvivable and kept going. Someone who understood that some wounds never heal, but that didn't mean new growth was impossible. He took her hand. Her skin was cooler than human standard, with a texture like silk over steel. Let's find out, he said. As they walked together toward the central lift, Daniel realized the viewing lounge was completely empty now. Just the two of them, 2 survivors from different worlds, following an algorithm's best guess at what compatibility might mean when shared trauma became a bridge instead of a wall. Above them, beyond the reinforced viewports and the station's protective shielding, the stars burned with an indifferent brilliance. But inside, in the careful steps of 2 people walking side by side toward an uncertain future, something warmer kindled. The blind date wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning.